Joining the Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design Meeting, October 15th, 2020. It is just after 5 o'clock and we have a 4-item agenda, so we'll move on quickly here.
Hey, Andrew.
And as soon as I get my slide to advance. There we go. All right, so this is a virtual meeting protocol slide. Staff will control the slides displayed throughout the meeting. Applicants, staff, board members, and members of the public should give their name first. Whenever speaking, applicants and members of the public must be sworn in before speaking for the first time. So Chairman Adrian will do that for you. Only attendees who have registered to speak before the deadline at noon today may speak during the meeting. I have a couple exceptions to that because I did receive a couple emails requesting they were having trouble registering, but we'll work through that. Video and microphone have been disabled for all attendees. Attendees will only be given the capabilities to speak when they are called on during the public comment period. Board members who need to recuse themselves from voting will be temporarily removed from the meeting and readmitted prior to addressing the next item. If the board needs to go into executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they are ready to return to the regular meeting. Chat has been disabled for everyone, and of course, this is a public meeting, so it is being recorded. With that, I'll turn it over to Chairman Adrian with his intro.
Thank you, Eric. This is the October 15th, 2020 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design. Present are Amanda Barton, Nell Postel, Paula Murphy, Andrew Hargett, and myself, Joel Adrian. Present from the planning staff, Eric Schultz, Lee Batchelder. And these proceedings are being recorded. We ask that those who speak identify themselves for the record. We will conduct this meeting in usual fashion. We will first receive information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, usually the Board of Zoning Appeals treats the matter as being uncontested and passes it as a matter of course. If, however, the city recommends against the application or there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application. Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design has the authority to do 3 things. 1, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. 2, grant special exceptions, fact-finding function of the board. And 3, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54.924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate and make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum are present and qualified to vote. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. And B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And finally, D, the authorization of a variance will not be a substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. With that, I'll pass it back to Mr. Schultz.
Very good, thank you. So public comment, order on each application. The chair announces each application followed by staff presentation and recommendation. Staff will call on the applicant to present their application after being sworn in by the chair. Staff will open the public comment period to receive comments from registered attendees in favor, first spoken, then written. Each speaker will be sworn in by the chair. Staff will then recognize registered attendees for public comments in opposition. After speaker is sworn in, first spoken, then written. Staff will recognize the applicant for a short rebuttal. The chair will then close the public comment period and begin board discussion. Providing comment, if you submitted a request to speak on an item, staff will call your name when it is your turn to speak and enable your microphone. Your microphone will be disabled after you're done speaking. You may only speak once for each item, and you must state your name and address for the record, or you will be not permitted to provide comment. Board discussion. Following public comment period, board members can make comments, ask questions, and make motions. After a motion and a second, board members will vote aye in favor or nay not in favor. If a vote is not unanimous, the chair will poll each member for their vote. The chairman shall announce the vote on the motion and the final decision on the application. If a board member needs to recuse, he will be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into an executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they are ready to return to the regular meeting. Very good. So before we get started with agenda item A1, I just want to make a note for the record that item B2, Maybank Highway, Johns Island, application number 2010-15-B2 has been withdrawn. So if anybody's attending for that particular item, it will not be heard.
Excellent. So I'll go ahead and start. This is Chairman Adrian, and our first item is item A1, and that is Fairbanks Drive, Daniel Island. The TMS number is 271-000010. The application number is 2010-15-A1. Request a variance from section 54.327 to allow the removal of 8 grand trees zoned DIGO. Eric, your presentation.
And I will state that the application was advertised based on the original application, but it has been revised to allow the removal of 5 grand trees.
Okay, thank you.
So what you see here on your screen is the original application submitted 6/1/2020. It was scheduled for the July 1. I believe it was deferred to the August, and then this board actually made a motion to defer to allow the applicant to go seek out and speak to all interested parties with concerns and so on and so forth. So that's the time lapse here. This is a document, stating the removal of the 8 grand trees, now 5, and their hardship test answers. This slide shows you the parcel in question, Daniel Island GO, General Office, which allows residential development. Here's our zoning map. It's the purple area to the north of Fairbanks Drive, adjacent to the DIR previously developed condominium project. This is an aerial photograph showing the site. As you can see, it's bound by a public right-of-way, Fairbanks Drive, and then to the southwest or southeast, the existing condominium project. The residual lands, as you can see, is tree covered and bound by the waters of the state, the OCRM critical area. Stanley Martin submitted this. I believe I forwarded this to y'all today, among other documents that we received by the 12 o'clock deadline. But this outlines their effort to meet, what meetings they held, and I'll let the applicant explain more about that whole process to get them to this point today. This is an exhibit as well that they submitted. It's very foreign to me. I'm not a legal expert, but they're thinking that this is a sample, if you will, of how grand trees would be protected with covenants, conditions, and restrictions for common interest. And of course, if this moves forward and this is something that the city would entertain, we'll have to get our legal folks involved and truly understand the language. This first slide, I must say, I asked for, and then the following slides, they kind of built upon. But this, I hope, alleviates a little bit of the confusion that might have been heard at the last meeting. The history of this project is that a previous owner went through the process to get a concept plan approved. Prior to that concept plan being approved by the Planning Commission in the fall of 2017, they actually went to this board to seek the removal of several grand trees. So what this slide does, the black X's are those previously approved grand trees. And because they then went to the Planning Commission, that entitled a vested right for the removal of these trees. And then of course, after they got approval at the Planning Commission, the project changed hands. The new owners picked up that approved concept plan and started the preliminary plat and road construction document review with the city. And that's where a lot of issues, because we're diving down into more detail about how this subdivision would be constructed, came to light about impacting trees and putting trees in tree wells and so on and so forth. So minor changes to a concept plan can be made at the zoning administrator's level, and that's what's occurred. And therefore they're moving forward. And again, the black X's are previously approved trees, and the trees marked in the red circles are the 5 that they're requesting tonight. And as previously stated, it was at 1.8 trees. This next slide, again, adds the proposed grand trees to remain since the August 6th meeting. Those arrows are indicating trees that they've massaged the plan and felt that they could preserve and maintain. So again, black X's previously approved, red circles tonight, green arrows pointing at trees that they dropped off the removal request list. This slide, again, indicates there was a lot of discussion about clear cutting of the site. What they have done here is they've identified non-grand trees and added all those smaller green dots representing non-grand trees. And they're proposing to maintain and preserve those. So over the course of the 4 slides, we've been kind of building on the trees to be preserved. And again, for those that are listening, the city asked that a qualified or certified arborist go on site, truth the tree to species, size, and then they evaluate the condition of the trees. And that relates to a coloring code system, if you will. So green trees are A grade, blue trees are B grade, the yellow trees are C grade, and the orange trees are D grade. And we have a system, and they exhibit past storm damage infested with insects, multi-stem, structural defects, etc. And then of course, red trees are staff level Fs, where it may be a tree that's totally blown over on the ground or snapped in half due to storm damage or whatever the case may be. This exhibit is, again, at this stage, they're investing time and money into a preliminary grading plan. And what this shows is the overall proposed stormwater management system, if you will. So you're starting to see ponds identified. There are those oddly shaped features with multiple contour lines shown. The black dots around the streets are grate or curb inlets, and you're starting to see how they're going to address stormwater, as well as the grading. And of course, they have a very low site, so they're dealing with minimum center line grades that the city requires, and so on and so forth. Very challenging site. This exhibit kind of takes a closer look at a couple of areas that the city was very interested in and asked for at this level further study. So you see cross sections here. Cross section A is through the larger tree save area. And what they do, they take that and they put it on a profile. So you can see that the lots are built up, the roads are built up, then they slope down to existing grade. They're proposing a pond, which is that deep V, and a walk across the open space, which would be elevated, and then existing grade again, and then the existing ditch, and back to your roads and sidewalks. So that's reading that A cross section left to right. And same thing for cross section B, where you have a pond, which is partially there. That smaller triangle by the B grade tree is somewhat there already. They're going to expand that. So we got some level of grading. This exhibit shows the site analysis and grade tree, the tree grade exhibit, again, showing the different color trees and how they interact with the proposed open space and lots. This exhibit is planting opportunities. The city's ordinance requires street tree plantings, but you're starting to see where they would potentially plant mitigation if the approval goes through in those open spaces. This is an exhibit of site analysis and tree grade. I guess I duplicated that, I apologize. But it does show the 20-foot visual buffer around the perimeter, the 40-foot critical line setback, which is a setback not set by the city, but the Army Corps of Engineers, and then their street layout and trees. Oh, I'm sorry, what this does, I'm sorry. So planting, so this, I apologize. This shows the tree. So this is tree number 6, and it describes its character, its physical characteristics. It's a 13.5/19 maple, and some photos. The next tree is number 7. This is a live oak, 26 inches in diameter, grade C. Again, with the red circle in the road. This slide will move on to tree number 8. It's a 45/13 live oak, 58 in total. Again, it's lean and physical characteristics. Again, in a alley, proposed alley. Tree number 9 is 15.5/13, 28.5, grade C. You can see it's physically connected at the base, one-sided canopy. That's in the cul-de-sac. And then a grade D tree, which is also in that street leading to the cul-de-sac, a 24/14. It's basically blown over, I would say. I think it had some tremendous character to it. But it is basically on its side, but still living. And you see it there. This is an exhibit that they submitted, and I believe it's a resolution or reaction to some of the conversations they had with the community. This is on the end of the peninsula, if you will, and they're proposing additional buffer area. And if I would go back a few slides, that's also where they picked up many non-grand trees to be preserved and how lots would be laid out in that cul-de-sac. This is an interesting series, and I want to refer back to this particular slide in a few minutes. But again, 1989. So as you can see, the south end of Daniel Island, and I would call the break line for the south line, there's a, if you follow that one heavy dark line that kind of separates the majority of the farm field from on the right-hand side where this site is, that's a old farm road that headed to the north end, and it actually crossed the causeway. And the north end was primarily pasture. The south end was actively farmed with row crops. And you can see how the farmer cut in, you know, these ditches to help drain to other natural features, if you will, other, you know, appendages off the marsh and the river. 2002, so the new off-ramp to Daniel Island, you can see, is built, and they have cut the road in that serves the north end. So, and a golf course is obviously either built or open by 2002, but no other development really on the north end or north of I-526 at this point in time. But you can see how they reacted to that old farm road where that split boulevard is, and then the circle, and they cross a causeway just above that. But again, how it relates to this site. And then as time goes on, because obviously farming activity ceased years ago and natural successional activities occur, pine trees, young sweet gums, you know, all your early pioneering species seed themselves in, and you get to a point where you have basically forest cover over 2019. So I want to refer to this slide now. I'll talk about it slightly, but again, and you'll hear in a minute, but take note of, this is a snapshot of the existing grading, or the proposed grading plan, and how I feel it will need to be tweaked as a recommendation or a condition to allow for the trees that are on somewhat of a ditch line to be preserved, and where natural grade should be maintained and allow to outflow to the marsh. This is another slide that shows my thoughts on the proposed grading plan, particularly the interior large tree save area. The city has been very adamant about keeping grade at natural grade around large groups of trees. And they're proposing to build a pond, do a raised sidewalk north to south through the middle of the block. And this exhibit shows what I feel should mimic what the farmer did, and basically utilize the majority of the existing ditch, and then maybe do a very shallow bioswale off of it and get your water to a great inlet or an outfall, if you will. Cut a very shallow meandering bioswale, and then again get it to the ditch on the right-hand side of the property. The green line around the perimeter represents slope. I realize that they have to build the lots up as well as the road, but that slope should dive and meet existing grade no further than what you see there, and basically stay outside of the tree protection zone. And then the sidewalk, we would not have it traverse through block, and just have two small little pieces of sidewalk in front of the four homes, and then their alley behind. So no pond excavation, no fill. Inside, fill slopes remain at grade. So I'll talk about that in just a moment. I just want to remind you of the May 3rd, 2017 conditions. Primarily here, I'll be talking about condition number 1, and that is to plant 148 caliber inches of canopy trees. So with that said, staff is prepared to recommend approval. And I want to go back and just kind of talk about this slide. It's my opinion that they do indeed meet the hardship test. I believe the extraordinary and exceptional conditions to the site are, number one, the shape of the site. I think that, you know, as development occurs, it's just a domino effect. The road got put in, that's a set fixed point, you know, and that was basically set at the north end of a requirement to build Governor's Park. And then the previous developer had the right to develop some units and carved out a parcel on the island. So you're left with this residual piece of land that has the shape that we're dealing with. What I think is exceptional about this, if you look at the shape, why the farmer decided to provide drainage ditches along the short axis versus the long axis. You have one that kind of comes down toward the south side, but there's some kind of a break, a natural little water feature there, but why he chose not to go long ways or on the long axis for this versus the short axis. And of course, I've dealt with these ditches over and over again on Daniel Island. To the south, where you see the open ones, where town center basically exists and some very large apartments, the farmer pretty much kept those ditches at bay and did not allow large trees to seed in and grow large, as you see here. So I think that's something to be pointed out. I don't believe these conditions generally apply to other property in the vicinity. Again, yes, ditches did once occur on large pieces of residual land now developed. But they weren't treed. They had a lot of tallow and sweet gum in them. And if you look at generally apply today, you know, the project's moving along and there's a lot of development. You can see the residential to the north. So again, I don't think these apply to any particular property in the vicinity. Number 3 talks about with the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. Again, I have to go back and say, you know, obviously a developer is all about yield. They want to get the maximum number of lots. And the city has been very adamant about preserving large tree save areas. So lot reduction has occurred. And I believe after you hear my recommendations associated with my approval recommendation or my conditions associated with my, there may be even further lot loss. And then because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. If I go back to this, you know, the district is GO. We could be in front of this board contemplating a very large office building, several office buildings with associated parking. Tonight we have residential proposed. The Daniel Island plan was very forward thinking where, you know, you want to protect the edge, and you can see that throughout the entire island, how the edge and the interface with the marsh has been protected with the 20-foot visual buffer zone. So, you know, I don't think it would be a detriment to the character of the district. So with all that said, my recommendation is for approval with the condition that you must plant 183 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the project site. Now keep in mind, this is in addition to the previously approved inches in which I will modify because I believe they are saving one of those previously approved trees. So the 148 inches previously approved shown on that slide, that would be backed out of the total number. Must provide HOA lots that are to remain at natural grade between the grand trees and the marsh shown. Again, I want to go back to this exhibit. I am really, I feel strong about this, that if you were to do as they propose, basically have trees, large trees in the front yards of homes and then provide an access for maybe a swale out to the marsh, I still feel will have too much fill encroach on these trees relative to driveway placement, the building pad itself. So my bottom exhibit says or indicates or illustrates that really these trees and associated natural grade around the trees need to be pulled out of the lots and put into HOA lot. Must use 4-foot chain link fences, tree protection barricades. That's very important on this site. Number 4, must use non-trench 4-foot chain link fence. So we're going to have a lot of interior trees, including the large tree save area. And when you introduce piles of dirt and you move dirt and you got to build a road and you're excavating, material gets kind of thrown all around the place. And then you have a rain bomb. And what this system does, it prevents silt from washing into the protective root zones of the trees to be preserved. Number 5, must have a certified arborist to treat and prune all grand trees to be preserved on the project site. And I will require that a separate document, a tree preservation plan, be submitted for review and approval. Number 6, must maintain the non-grand trees in the additional buffer area as shown on the exhibit dated 9/17. That was that hand sketch, if you will. I like the idea. I think it helps with some of the community concerns, and must submit a tree, must provide a tree protection barricade plan to protect the trees and buffer area. Number 7, must use an LID. That is a low impact development. That's what LID stands for, stormwater management technique. And again, this goes back to this slide, where I'm hopeful that in lieu of digging a large pond and changing the whole hydrology of that area, that they utilize the existing section of ditch, then kind of meander off that and dig a very shallow bioswale and hit their outfall structure. And that can happen on both the left and the right pod, if you will, and then maintain perimeter slope on the outside and just leave the interior at natural grade and hopefully save other non-grand trees that are in the vicinity. So no pond excavation, no fill, all perimeter road and lot grading. Fill, if you will, must be located outside the TPZ. That's a tree protection zone. Number 8, must provide for positive drainage and no fill within the TPZs for all other grand trees not specifically mentioned above. So again, not the large tree save area and not the trees in between the road and the marsh, but every other tree. There should be absolutely no fill within the TPZ, and they have to figure out how to maintain positive drainage. And then finally, number 9, the required visual buffer zone, that's part of the Daniel Island Master Plan, must be maintained in an HOA lot as shown on the exhibits. So with that, I will turn it back over to Chairman Adrian.
Thank you, Eric. Is the applicant present?
Yes, and what we need to do is we need to have Scott assist me. We have quite a large team on the applicant side. We have Michael Kane needs to be unmuted, Jordan Smith, Patterson Farmer, Russ Seaman. They're all with Seaman Whiteside Associates. With Stanley Martin, we have Mark Lipsmeyer and Roger Hunt. With Natural Directions, that's their consulting arborist firm, we have Donnie Skinner. And then I believe their attorney representative from Nexon Pruitt is Cheryl Calhoun Shroon. Sorry about that, Cheryl.
It's okay, thank you.
Hey, Eric. The great news is you got everybody in one room, so we can. I know, Chairman, if you want to just have everybody swear in, we're all in the same room. So
that's
fantastic. One phone call.
Thank you. Yep. So let's go ahead and we'll take care of that. Do you all swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
We do.
Everybody say that? Just kidding.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, I guess if you would begin with your presentation, and if you could try to keep it within about 10 minutes if possible.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. All right. Good evening, board members. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Michael Kane with Seaman Whiteside, 501 Wando Park Boulevard, Suite 200, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, 29464. With me tonight are Jordan Smith and Patterson Farmer with Seaman Whiteside, Roger Hunt and Mark Lipsmeyer with Stanley Martin Homes, Donnie Skinner with Natural Directions, and Cheryl Schaum with Nexon Pruitt. I would like to start off by thanking Eric for his presentation. This project was presented to you all during the August 6th BZA-SD meeting. The motion from the board was deferral in order to communicate with the neighbors in an effort to resolve differences. Prior to and since August 6th BZA meeting, we have had multiple meetings with the residents and representatives of Daniel Island. The September BZA-SD meeting was also deferred so we can make sure that there was enough time to meet with the neighbors. On September 9th, Seaman Whiteside and Stanley Martin Homes held a virtual meeting with the neighbors that included Council Member Del Chapo, Jane Baker with Daniel Island Property Owners Association, Daniel Island residents along King George Street and their legal representative, and other Daniel Island residents. During the virtual meeting, the residents had the opportunity to study our exhibits and see the grand trees that have been requested for removal. One of our certified arborists, Mike Russell with Natural Directions, was also able to provide information on their tree assessment process and how they evaluate trees. We allowed time for questions and comments. Almost a week later, on September 15th, Seaman Whiteside and Stanley Martin Homes held an in-person meeting with two residents along King George Street. They shared with us their concerns and proposed adjustments. Per the request of the Daniel Island residents, Stanley Martin also met with residents on site. Since August 6th, we have made considerable updates to the site layout in order to preserve 3 of the 8 grand trees, as Eric mentioned tonight, that were previously requested for removal. In addition, we are proposing that 1 grand tree from the approved BZA meeting in May 2017 be saved within the development. Approximately 85% of the total number of grand trees will be preserved on site for the future residents to enjoy. We listened to the Daniel Island residents' concern with the proposed development and are proposing an increased buffer, as Eric mentioned tonight, along the northernmost lots of the development, as shown in the diagram. They are most concerned with the visibility of seeing into the development from the northernmost side of the site. In addition, Stanley Martin Homes is agreeing to plant a minimum 6-inch caliper tree at or near each location of the 5 grand tree removals in this BZA application. I would like to remind the board that the development is zoned DIGO, Daniel Island General Office, as Eric had mentioned, and is shown on the Daniel Island Master Plan zoning found in the Daniel Island PUD. The site has been intended for development since the PUD was adopted. Residential uses are allowed within this zone and would be the most appropriate use given its proximity to the Daniel Island residents north of this site. In conclusion, we are presenting to you 5 grand tree removals and ask for your consideration for approval. We have a unique hardship, as Eric had mentioned earlier, as no other project in the vicinity has the same size, shape, and the same flood zone, same dispersal of trees, same grade fluctuation, with low spots and the presence of ditches. It's a challenging site, and we have worked around all the other trees on the site. It takes a lot of space to preserve grand trees, which unreasonably burdens the property when applied to every tree. Furthermore, we have created spaces around the higher quality grand trees and feel that this is a great plan in preserving the quality trees on this site. Mitigations for the grand tree removals will benefit the community long-term with its streetscape and HOA spaces and will fit well within the fabric of the Daniel Island community for many years to come. Lastly, we received Eric's approval with conditions right before this BZA meeting tonight. We asked the board to not make comments, conditions number 2 and 7, conditions, as we will need to work with TRC staff for these specific details. We have been working with TRC staff now for almost about 2 years on this project. With all the other conditions, we are good with. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else from your team that wishes to present, or should we see if there's anybody opposed?
I think we're good. We're available if there's any questions.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
And if there's anything regarding the tree assessment, we have, again, Donnie Skinner with Natural Directions with us.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have numerous exhibits prepared after my recommendation slides, and I'd like to have you address just support first. Okay,
perfect. We have anybody present that wants to speak that's in support, or do you just have emails or slides?
An email. So
okay.
Let me get to that. So as the development team expressed, they met, you know, they have a timeline there and how many meetings they held and what have you. And of course, I'm always interested in what Daniel Allen, ARB, would have to say. So we did receive this email soon after a meeting occurred. And, you know, Jane, thanks for the feedback. Will DI submit a position letter, is what I asked her after a little bit of correspondence, and would the below suffice email. So the Daniel Allen Town Association does not object to the tree removal request for Stanley Martin's project. The marshes on Fairbanks Drive. Stanley Martin representative met with all impacted residents during the course of the last several months and as recently as 9/9/20 to get feedback and hear concerns. Basically signed Jane Baker, President, Daniel Allen Town Association. So that's it that I have for support. As far as folks in opposition, I'll just carry on just a moment. We had 2 individuals registered to speak, Mr. Robert Schroeder and Ron Kessinger. And then, of course, during the course of the day, I received several emails from an attorney representing a group of people, and he requested that he speak. And so I am prepared to go through a couple of slides on that side. But we would need to, it was kind of my understanding that Mr. Cody Lenhart was going to speak for the whole, but we'll need to get clarification on that as to whether Robert Schroeder, Ron Kessinger, and Scott Petroe would want to speak once we, but so let's unmute Cody first. Cody, can you hear us?
I can, thank you very much.
Eric, before you get started, yeah, if you could just explain what you would like to occur tonight. I know
sure
the chairman has discretion on time limits and that sort of thing, but I did email you with a kind of an understanding that you were going to speak for the whole and take approximately 10 minutes, and then others signed up. So explain what you want to do first, and then we'll get into it.
Okay, actually, thank you, Eric and Chairman Adrian.
Sorry, Cody, can I go ahead and swear you in?
Well, yeah, I'm not going to, I'm not going to speak first. So that's what I wanted to clear up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. We would ask that Mr. Schroeder, Bob, be able to speak on behalf of the clients. He's requested to present the concerns, and I'm here to follow up when the time is right, when he's done. So I'll step aside at this point.
Okay, Robert Schroeder then, Scott, please. Robert, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I'll have the chairman do his thing about swearing you in.
Okay. Mr. Schroeder, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes, I do.
Excellent.
Okay, so Mr. Schroeder submitted some exhibits starting here. So what I did, he sent 10 slides. I put 2 slides per, 2 of his slides per my slide presentation. And Mr. Schroeder, I did forward this on to the board members because so much information was coming in, and I felt it would be pertinent for them to understand. But you have the floor.
Are you frozen or?
Nope, I'm ready to go if you are. Or tell me to advance.
It looks like you're frozen.
Oh, no, it might be something on your end.
Hello.
We can hear you.
And Mr. Schroeder, you're clear to speak and present. I think we got an internet issue.
It is raining, so maybe there's some issue with the weather. I don't know. Transmission.
Can we reverse direction and go to Cody first and then Robert?
Let's hope that he comes back. Let's go to Ron Kessinger. He did sign up, and these are his slides. Ron?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, Ron?
Excellent, thank
Let
you.
the chairman, let the chairman swear you in, please.
Yes,
Okay, Mr. Kessinger, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
so, yes, I do.
Excellent. If you would state your name and your address for the record, and then you may begin your presentation.
Yes, Ron Kessinger, 185 King George Street, Daniel Island.
Thank you.
I don't know about, I see this slide, it's sideways as opposed to up and down. I don't know, Eric, if you can turn the slide. There should be two there.
Just a moment.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, Eric. Well, thank you for your time. I'm going to be brief and I'll be directly to the point here. My property sits directly across the subject property, and particularly on the north end where it's the lowest lying area on the parcel. Just to give you a little framework here, this is my yard. My house sits over 160 feet from the critical line. The picture that you see that's dated 2015 was during a rainstorm. This was not during a hurricane, not during a tropical storm. This was a heavy rainstorm. If you look at, you'll see the gate and a fence there. It's got vines on it. From the gate to the back to the critical line is approximately 100 feet. Just from the rainstorm itself, the water came in to almost to the back gate, not quite, so within 80 to 90 feet beyond the critical line. My property is actually a higher elevation than the subject north end part of this parcel, okay? So it shows you the impact of heavy rains, just from a heavy rain during this picture. If you look at the 2017 slide, this was during a tropical storm. It was a hurricane that when it reached our area, it was downgraded to a tropical storm. You can see back behind a dark area, you see the water. It's one thing to talk about flooding. It's another thing to talk about elevation, but it's another thing to actually see the results of flooding. This went beyond my fence. This went over 110 feet from the critical line. The water was over between 2 and 3 feet deep in this area, okay? 2 to 3 feet deep. This is again, higher elevation than the northern part. Eric, if you could turn to the slide that from Seaman Whitesides that you went through where they drew in lots 69, 70, and 71, where they added an additional little buffer, a water buffer. If you could bring that up, please. Yes. So just to understand, they're proposing to put 3 lots there where if they were to build this would be in the middle of 2 to 3 feet of water during heavy rains or during a tropical storm event. I bring this up, and I know this is about a variance regarding trees, but the little cul-de-sac here and the road that leads to that development is again, removing additional grand trees to access something that we still don't know whether these lots can actually be developed as drawn. And in fact, this statement says additional buffer to be coordinated during the TRC review. It is critical that we get this right the first time. You don't want to build a road. You don't want to remove grand trees and realize that it should never occurred, these lots should never occurred as drawn to begin with. You cannot bring back those trees. Thank goodness that you deferred our August hearing, because there would have been 3 more grand trees that would have been removed had you approved what was presented back in August. So when it was said that it was impossible to build without removing these grand trees, well, they just made something impossible possible by saving at least 3 grand trees. And I think there's definitely more here that Mr. Schrader can talk to. Now, if you go back to the 89 picture, that shows you this north end. Guess what? If you could go back to that north end, to the 89 photo. This was over 30 years ago. The farmers knew what we know today. That northern point, all the trees removed because you can't farm there. You can't put livestock there where there's constant encroachment of salt water. They knew that over 30 years ago. The 2017 proposal that Eric alluded to, where they only said, hey, well, we're doing this with a removal of 5 grand trees. Guess what? They had an HOA of over a 100-foot buffer on this north point because they knew they couldn't build lots there because of the flooding issues. It all still ties back again to these trees that are putting in roads to access this northern point that clearly shows that this is underwater. And this is pictures today, the 2015 and the 27, and we've got pictures to show that last month, during the high tide of last month, water was encroaching to 150 feet from the critical line just for a high tide. Hey, by the way, there's another high tide coming in on this coming Saturday, 8 feet elevation, which is similar to what Eric is showing the elevation on some of his detail level here at 8 feet, and they're calling for a high tide of 8 feet. Please consider what's going on. You can't bring back trees that's already been removed. This area is underwater. It was underwater back in 1989. The developer in 2017 realized that, and you've got pictures to see it today. Does not make sense, and I would ask for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have the other gentleman back yet?
Yeah, I see that he's there. Scott, could you unmute Robert Schroeder? See if we have him on. Robert, can you hear us? Robert?
There, we okay?
Yes, can you hear us?
I can hear you fine.
Very good. You
Excellent.
just tell me to advance the slides after the chairman does his thing with.
Yeah, sure. We seem to have buffering going on, so it's a little choppy, but it should be okay.
I think we've already sworn him in, so I think he's ready to go ahead and start presenting.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, and appreciate Ron jumping in and talking about the problem with the north end. I know an awful lot of what you said, Eric, had to do with phase 1. Matter of fact, just about everything you said had to do with phase 1. Our concern has a lot more to do with phase 2. And as Ron said, the roads that are being designed to go there and the trees that are being cut or want to be cut for that. And phase 2 hasn't even hit the review cycle yet. So that's just a segue into the rest of this presentation. Also, just as a housekeeping matter, we just got this letter of September 22nd from Stanley Martin about all the meetings they had. I think you'll understand that we reserve the right to question the characterization of a lot of what went on in there. We don't have a chance to respond to it, but we do not agree with everything that's stated in there.
All right, thank you.
So with that, I'm going to go through this very quickly because of the glitches and just to save time. There's a lot on these charts. Hope you take a look at them. I'm not intending to go through it. But basically, we are the King George Citizens Group. We're homeowners. Our homes directly face this property. We're highly impacted by what goes on there. This picture that is there was picked not because it's particularly scenic. That's just a normal everyday high tide. But what I want you to look at are those trees on the border. They're dying. They're dead. There is no buffer in that area. If you go further to the right, it's even worse. And that is all because of what Ron was talking about. Day in, day out, inundation with salt water from the tide, plus occasional storms, and has everything to do with elevation. So again, I know we're not talking about all those matters, but it does come back to the roads and the trees that are being cut down because of the roads. We're basically, there's 25 homes here that directly face this property, but we do have the backing of a citizens petition with over 1,000 Daniel Island residents that leaped at the chance to sign it. So we are backed by a large number. Matter of fact, everybody we talked to on Daniel Island supported this. We were not engaged in the planning or development of the project. We learned about it in, I think it was July. But we are not against development, and I want to make that clear. You mentioned that this was zoned and we could easily have an office building there or something. We're not against development at all, but we do have very strong and deep felt concerns about the current plans for this particular development. We think it's a step backwards from what they had in 2017. Major concerns with the variance, you can read them. First, there's some clarifications that need to be made about how many trees are being removed and so forth. We think that the variance authorization cannot be granted by the board because it cannot make the 4 findings that are required, and we'll get back to that. We think authorizing a variance now would be very premature in view of what has to happen for phase 2. And before you start cutting down trees that can't get replaced, we need to get that settled. And then there's just adverse impacts. Clarification on the number of trees and location. I'll go through this quickly. Stanley Martin's own map 2.0 shows that there are only 47 grand trees available for any variance, not the 80 or 90 that they claim. The problem is they're counting all of the trees that are along the periphery or along the perimeter in the 40-foot zone. And those, from what we understand, cannot be cut. So they're out of the picture. There are only 47 trees that are at issue. And if you take a look at what Stanley Martin really wants to do, they want to remove 5 new ones, but they also want to remove 10 old ones. So the total they want to remove is 15. And if you do the math, 15 over 47 is 31% of all available grand trees are what they want to take down. And a lot of those are in phase 2. Which trees are necessary? Well, that's changed from time to time. If you take a look at the requirements for the variance request, it has to be unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. Well, we've seen that just from the recent changes, there are 4 trees that I believe that are now off the list, others that are on, and then there was a swap of 2 trees to add to the list. And those were a mix of C and D. So it's not about quality of trees. They added D trees. And again, it's not about quality, it's about location. It's about where they want to put roads. The grand trees are protected. That's just a small part. As it says here, there are 17 grand trees, almost grand trees. If they want to save trees, there are 13 oaks that are between 20 and 23.5 inches that they will be cutting down. They're not shown as being saved. And there's also a question about the 40-foot buffer zone. We can postpone that, but we did notice that in their presentation, I think it's their first map that they show. They changed the 40-foot critical line and are now calling it a 40-foot critical line setback with a 20-foot visual buffer zone. We had understood and been told that the entire 40-foot zone was a no-cut zone. Don't touch the trees. If that's changed, we need to know that. That's a request for a clarification. Very quickly, the map on the left is intended to put all of this out so that you can really see what's going on. This is their topography map and tree survey map that was done in 2019, and it was posted by Stanley Martin. You can see phase 1, phase 2, that's the blue line down the middle. Give you a sense of this whole area. This is like a plate, if you will, that's tilted on the right, on the south side towards the bottom. It's about 9-foot elevation. If you go down to the other tip, it's at marsh level. So this whole thing tilts down, and that affects what trees are growing and flooding and so forth. That is important because, again, phase 2 involves that area. The trees, you can see that most of the saved trees, the green trees, are in phase 1. Most of the trees to be cut are in phase 2. Why? Because they want to build a road out to the cul-de-sac in order to put more lots in on the end. Nothing to do with, you know, quality or that sort of thing.
Love you too.
Somebody talking?
Continue on.
Oh, sorry, that was me. I'm sorry.
Hello? All right. Again, we'll see that later, but the changes in the trees, the orange ones that are on there are ones that used to be on the cut list are now not on the cut list. The ones that are pink in the middle and green on the outside are now on the cut list. Again, we're talking about unnecessary hardship that these trees are causing. It's obvious that they can move the roads around and avoid trees if they want to. So unreasonably restrict the utilization? No, the original one had 5 trees. This one has 15. And then the topography is important. Let's get back to the next thing, though I don't want to belabor this. The variance authorization, we do not feel that that should be granted. There's no basis for finding an unnecessary hardship. Again, they've shown that they have resilience, they can change the plans. The tree removals are to facilitate road and lot decisions that are fully in the hands of the developer. A lot of them are removing trees for roads that are for phase 2 that hasn't even considered yet. And the result of is that the variance has to be denied. There's, at a minimum, this needs to be resubmitted after the phase 2 plans have fully been vetted. And that's something to keep in mind. You should not be doing something on phase 2 that hasn't even been looked at yet. At least that portion needs to be delayed. A couple other quick things on unnecessary hardship that you've got there on the slide. There's court cases that say a claim of unnecessary hardship.
Robert, are you there? Does anybody hear him?
I don't hear him.
No.
Robert, you cut out. If you can hear us, you cut out.
Eric, do you have a way to send him the phone number that he can call in on?
Scott could do that. Scott's right here next to me. If Scott could do that.
So everybody, I want to apologize for my son coming in and me blurting out, "Love you." That was not very professional. I thought I was on mute. So sorry about that.
No problem.
I'll continue here and then maybe ask Cody to come back if Cody wants to add anything. So those were the remaining slides. Scott, could you unleash Cody and just have Cody sum this up?
Y'all hear me?
Cody, yes? I think the chairman does have to swear you in.
Yes. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Cody, if I can swear you in, if you would Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Excellent. So we got about probably 80% of the way, maybe 85% of the way through the other presentation, and then he cut out again. But if you can maybe wrap it up for us.
Yeah, and if Bob comes back on, I'll let him finish it. I appreciate being allowed to speak. I was a little bit late to get into Eric today. I've been in depositions all day, and so I appreciate Eric and the board's allowing me to just chime in. I think just what I would merely add at this time is that I think on behalf of my firms, my clients, and Mr. Schroeder and Mr. Kessinger, two of them, you know, at the last Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, we submitted on their behalf a letter spelling out the objections based on the legal standard for granting of a variance. The application that has been submitted, although there have been some changes, none of the justifications for meeting the variance criteria has been altered. And reading a document on its face is the only way we know how to make a decision on something. And the document that was presented originally to requesting the grant of the variance has not been adjusted, and we still believe, as was put forth in that letter to the board prior, that the variance criteria has not been established, that the applicant has failed to meet its burden of proof for granting of a variance. I would just incorporate, if you would, Eric, into the record that letter was submitted and would be part of this hearing as well.
That is correct.
Thank you. And at this point, I mean, I think that the points raised by Mr. Kessinger, Mr. Schroeder at this point speak to the issues. But if there's any, legal questions, I'm certainly willing to chime in. I do think if Bob can't come back, I will just touch on what those last two slides show, if you don't mind putting those last two up, Eric.
I'm back, and I think I'm unmuted.
Okay. If Bob is back, I'll cede to him. If he cuts out, I'll finish it up.
You're doing a much better job than I am, Cody, so if you want, that's fine. Let's see, the slide before that was just a quick schematic, again, to give the commissioners a sense of what's going on. I don't know if you can go back one slide. Hello?
Yes.
This is where we left off, I believe.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just on the right. That just shows, again, Ron had already touched on this, but you've got a huge jurisdictional wetlands down there. The blue line is the 4-foot topography zone. And all of those lots on the bottom are the ones that are going to be in the flood. They're going to be flooded. But the key for us for the tree issue is take a look at the cul-de-sac and how much space that takes and how many trees are being would be sacrificed for it, and it may never happen. These are the two photos that Ron showed during the last high tide. 18 inches of water at the 40-inch marker. If you look, you can see a red flag. That's the 40-inch point. The other one is water flowing in. It was still flowing in at 150 feet. The one on the right is, again, that famous 1989 photo. Just says that the north end is not developed for a good reason. Same thing in 2017 because of flooding, erosion, and so forth. There's a lesson there. And again, it comes back to how this whole thing ought to be postponed, at least the phase 2 portion of it, until that's had a chance to be vetted. And as Cody was saying, we don't believe there's unnecessary hardship. Major questions remain. And again, request that grant not be given for all of these trees. Anything in phase 2 should be postponed, tabled until completion of those reviews. It's much too serious. Don't want to cut trees. You can't put them back together again. And with that, Cody, if you want to say anything.
I'm good. I appreciate, like I said, I appreciate the board's consideration of these concerns. I think Bob raises the valid point that there was a 2017 plan that went through the concept plan, and as Eric alluded to in his comment, the zoning administrator does in fact have authorization to grant minor changes to a concept plan under the ordinance. Minor, of course, obviously is the subjective word there, and the minor revisions are deemed, at least under the ordinance here, insignificant. I think my clients would submit to you that the changes that were made between the 2017 concept plan and what's being considered now would not amount to insignificant shifts in open space or streets. The streets were added at the north end, which resulted in new lots that had previously not existed or not existed in their configuration, and an area of about I think it was about 3 acres that was going to be preserved is now slated to be developed. So I think that leads us to the point that Mr. Schroeder has pointed out, that it seems incredibly premature to authorize the removal of grand trees in a phase that still has to go through TRC, stormwater, and so forth, because if they cut those trees, they can't put them back. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to both of you. There anybody else that wanted to speak that was opposed?
There's no other registered speakers, and I don't see any other names that emailed me present on the attendee list. I do want to, for the record, enter in the 2 letters from Mr. Lenhart. One is dated August 5th. I assume we read this or saw this before the August 6th meeting, but it is a letter he wrote on behalf of his clients. It references some the hardship test, some case law, and then how basically, or it does state that they feel it doesn't meet the hardship test. And then a second letter, again, from Mr. Lenhart, dated October 14th. I sent both of these to you all, I believe, earlier this morning. The first paragraph, yes, again, is he's writing this on the behalf of his clients. Again, references some case law. And then the third paragraph, the BZA must apply the statutory standard when considering whether to grant a variance. The applicant, in this case, has failed to carry out this burden of proof. Signed by Cody Lenhart. I do have one individual that left a comment in our Innovate, so I'll read that now. It is in opposition. It was submitted by Thomas Moyer, 1238 Smythe Street, Daniel Island, 29492 at on 10/13 around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We are against the removal of the live oaks, as mentioned. What is the point of having zoning laws when they are continually ignored, all for the mighty dollar? There is nothing wrong with the trees in question. We have a live oak in our backyard that split in half many years ago and is still doing fine. How can you equate cutting down 8 majestic trees that have been there hundreds of years and replacing them with anything? How much more are you going to pave over Daniel Island? Enough is enough. The character of Daniel Island has already been destroyed. It looks like Harlem when you drive over the Wando Bridge. These trees are one reason we moved to Daniel Island. When we moved here, we weren't allowed to paint our house the color we chose. That was a zoning law, and it was enforced. So why isn't there tree law enforced? So why isn't the tree law enforced? The builder should not have purchased the land. He knew the zoning law. There was a wink and a nod that he could get the law changed. If you haven't been here to see these trees, I suggest you get yourself over here and see them for yourself. So that was the comment submitted through our Innovate website. And that concludes people in support and in opposition.
Okay, and then at this point, I guess we can go back to the applicant. Yes. For a rebuttal if they have anything they would like to add. So if we would yes, get those people back on.
Yes, Scott, if you could. Michael Kane, okay. The Whiteside phone, I guess.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes, we got you.
Okay. All right. Well, appreciate this time again. I would like the board to know up front that we took when Stanley Martin approached Stephen Whiteside after the May 2017 approvals for the previous BZAs, we took the concept plan that Cody and Bob and Rob have all been mentioning. We took it to TRC, and TRC rejected the plan. So we basically have been coordinating the last 2 years with TRC on a development plan for this site. And where we are today is what you guys have seen, and we keep making considerable updates like we just did for preparation for this BZA. We had 8 grand tree removals previously, and we are only proposing 5 now. With us all tonight, and I mentioned this again earlier, but Patterson Farmer and Jordan are with our civil, but I know that there has been some discussions regarding the flooding, and I'll let Patterson speak more to that.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Patterson Farmer, Stephen Whiteside and Associates. Certainly heard the concerns of the neighbors of the flooding in the area and the high tides and things, and we were certainly well aware of it. We were well aware of the flood zones that we were in, and with that, of course, that is taken into consideration and addressed through our design drawings as we design and permit this with the City of Charleston and with DHEC for land disturbance permits.
Yeah, and in addition, and I know Mr. Schroeder brought this up, but the 40-foot that's all along the perimeter is a no-cut setback that Stanley Martin is aware of, and that they are also proposing the additional buffer at the northern tip. This was based off the concerns that you even heard here tonight from the folks that are along King George Street. And besides that, I know Eric mentioned the hardship and walked us through all of the criteria in which this project faces. I know I mentioned earlier about how this site is unique in its size, shape, its grading fluctuations, the dispersal of trees, and we are meeting all those criteria for the hardship. Other than that, definitely appreciate everybody's time. Again, this is about 5 tree removals. I know that there was discussions about the development itself, but as Patterson mentioned, as I've mentioned, we are coordinating through TRC staff. We will obviously comply with TRC and work with Eric and all those. And we have and we will continue to do so.
Excellent. So then we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll open it up just to the board. Apologize, I got a printer next to me going. But we'll open it to the board for discussion and any questions. And I guess if I can start. So Eric, my understanding was on the previous approval, the other plan, there were 8 trees to be removed that were approved, and that was revised to 7?
No. So I did not include that exhibit because it created confusion last month or so. So this is the first slide. Again, May of 2017, the 5 black X's were approved by this board. 3 kind of in a line central to the project, 2 plan left, if you will. So 5 were granted approval. That was with the other owner and the original concept plan. And actually the tree removal process, you know, we don't have a dead set ordinance that says you have to get your tree removals prior to going to planning commission for the concept plan approval. That was a choice that the developer at the time did, you know, after numerous walks on site, identifying the trees, et cetera, tweaking that concept plan at the time, numerous times, numerous meetings with Daniel Allen, ARB, et cetera. And they chose to go for the trees, and then they went to the planning commission thereafter. I think it happened in November of 2017, October, November timeframe. So 5 trees then, they're vested because the new owners purchased that concept plan basically, and then started to seek TRC review and approval for the preliminary plat and road construction documents. And, you know, previously there was no real study of grading and how you're going to preserve all the trees that were going to be preserved. They were putting them in tree wells and all, and that's when the city says, nope, you're not meeting the requirement of the tree protection ordinance, restudy. So they came back with a minor change to the concept plan, and It's been evolving, and that's what we have today. So the original 5, and then they came back in July, made the application for 8, and now it's for an additional 5. So they were able to take 3. Again, that's what this exhibit with the arrows, they took 3 trees out, and then actually are saving 1 of the original 5, I believe, that orange tree upper left.
Okay, so then I'm just because there was mention from the people opposed, there were 15 trees, grand trees being removed, and I just don't know how they came up with that number, because I guess I'm looking at 5 requested now plus 4, so it'd be a total of 9, correct?
So they dropped 1 out of the original 5. Now you see 4 black X's on this exhibit and 5 with red circles, so 9.
Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. So it is only 9.
But keep in mind, the 4 black X's are vested, so the variance has been modified. Today's hearing has been modified from 8 to 5. I'm trying not to confuse you. Tonight you have just the 5 in red circles. The 5 in red circles.
Yep. Okay. Excellent. So then, Eric, if you could put your conditions back up again, because the applicant requested something about items 2 and 7 they had issues with those, or?
Yes. So number 2, my condition is must provide HOA lots that must remain at natural grade between the grand trees and the marsh as shown on the city exhibit. I'll go back to that.
Yeah. I thought that was a great idea.
So as you can see, they are proposing 2 HOA easements. That's what the purple lines represent on the exhibit on the top.
Yeah.
So they're not proposing to take those trees out of the future lots. And my concern is that in order to build a house and to get the driveway in, you're going to have to bring in fill because the road's going to be up. You're going to have to slope down, build a pad. I know some of these houses I think are proposed to be drive under, but there's still going to be, you know, positive drainage requirements through stormwater. So my exhibit on the bottom says you're going to have to study the lot lines, shift the lot lines, possibly remove a lot or 2, and put those trees and those angles, if you will, with positive drainage to the marsh on HOA lots, tying into the HOA lot that they're showing as the 20-foot visual buffer.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion.
Condition number 7, must use LID. Again, that's low impact development. Bioswale, I have been preaching since day 1 with this new team that if we're going to save these trees and preserve these trees in perpetuity, we can't tinker with the microenvironment and the natural grades around them. So I suggest, or I'm saying that they're going to have to back off their proposal of building a pretty significant stormwater facility. I would say it's a small pond in the large tree save area. I know they have to meet post and pre runoff requirements, but we've been talking to, my ears have come off with stormwater about this. I'm just concerned that you're digging a hole. You're going to change the hydrology. They're proposing a walk from north to south with a little bit of fill to keep that, you know, ADA accessible. And what I propose is that, no, you can't build the pond. The yellow lines represent utilizing the existing ditch, peeling off of that, or, you know, modifying that and putting a little wiggle in it, a shallow swale to the existing ditches to maintain, you know, positive drainage out of there, because it's going to be a hole because of the surrounding grades rising up for the home lots and the road. But if we don't do anything other than that, then I feel we're going to have great success. And so therefore the swale is the yellow, the slope is the green around the perimeter of the tree save area that has to dive and meet existing grade outside the TPZ zones, and then eliminate a section or 2 of sidewalk. So therefore there's no pond excavation, no fill, and inside the fill slopes remain at existing grade.
All right, thank you. you, Eric. That's, I think, all I have right now. Anybody else have questions or comments? Anybody?
No. Amanda?
Andrew?
I like Eric's description of what tree 9, picturesque. I don't disagree. It was. You know, I mean, I understand the drainage concerns, but you know, that's not what we did. You know, as far as the trees go, sure. You know, if the developer wants to, you know, build lots in an area that floods, that's not really our issue, is it?
Yeah, I don't know that it's our call. That's doesn't make sense. It's not something that somebody wants to buy, a lot that constantly floods. I do think that there's a valid point, though, that if we approve the trees to be removed and then they ultimately can't come up with a resolution, I guess that really the point's somewhat moot, because if they can't come up with a solution to develop those lots, they're not going to get a permit to start plowing trees down until they've had every committee approve their design and the engineering. So it might be all right.
That's what I was thinking. But then it's also an equally valid point, you know. Can we cut these trees down just so that you can have these lots? I think that's an interesting question for us.
Yeah. All right. I'll ask one more question. If Eric, the slide that shows the proposed plan with the trees to be removed, if you can go to that one. There we go. This one's good. So, okay, that's good. So the tree that's like right in the middle, the biggest large yellow tree with the X on it, the red circle, is that tree number 8?
I got that as 8.
That one.
38, 45, 13,
Okay.
total 58.
Okay. So would it be possible to, instead of having to put a road right there and have those townhouse units, if, you know, we got 2 single family units there, you wouldn't need a road. One could be accessed from one side, one's accessed from the other side. And that tree could be saved. So I don't know that, like, you know, the other trees, I personally don't know that there's an issue. I really like tree number 8 there. It looks pretty neat. It'd be fun to have in the backyard.
Yeah, I think if tree 8 remained, then basically you would have, you know, you would just have that one curving road. You wouldn't have the cul-de-sac, so you'd lose what, 4 lots? 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Lose 3.
Yeah.
So you keep 2, lose 3, save the tree. So I'll say that I'm certainly I don't have an issue with the development of the property. I personally think when the slides were shown, and you have the 1980 or the 2002 slide, and then the present slide, and you actually just look at the King George area. So if you look at 2002 and look at the King George, and then well, bam, you got like 50 houses over there. You know, so I can with confidence say that there were grand trees removed in that section of development. So I would say that, you know, this area is developable. The land has been purchased to be built on. I personally would much rather have single family residential across from me versus a 3 or 4 story commercial structure. So I like the plan. I do think that tree number 8 should be saved.
I tend to agree with you on that, Joel. Andrew, did you look at the, or Amanda, did you look at the arborist report on tree 8?
Yeah.
Comments?
I mean, sea-grade tree, and then a lot of that's because of the form, but a lot of that's because of what's going on around it. I mean, live oaks are hardy trees. I've said it before, and people don't like to hear it, but you can torture these things, and they'll just laugh at you. They'll keep going. So, I mean, it's only going to get better looking, and it'll fix itself if you take care of it. The same thing with the tree that was blown over. I mean, they have a will. So, I mean, look at that thing. It was blown over in a storm. Who knows which one? And it's still going. And now, you're seeing advantageous growth to the right to counterbalance it out. That thing can easily make it another 200 years probably. But,
All right. Any questions of the applicant? Or if there are no questions, does anybody have a motion? Go ahead.
Yeah. Are we able to speak to y'all?
No.
About the tree?
No, not at this point. We've closed the public portion. If we directly ask a question to you, then you can answer.
Scott, if you could mute those.
So Eric, just to see if I am correct in thinking that if we approved the plan and for trees to be removed, no construction will be done until they've had their TRC approvals and they've prepared their mitigation plans, and they have their engineering that shows they can actually develop those lots at the cul-de-sac. And
right.
Buyer beware.
Right. We wouldn't permit them to go out after the 5-day appeal period and cut the trees just down. They'd have to go through the review process.
Right.
With an approved development plan. First, the preliminary plat. Second, the road construction document. Install the required protective measures, and then release them for clearing and grading.
Could we make, let's just say there was a motion made, and could there be a motion made that you couldn't take out, for instance, the leading tree is what, tree 8 or tree? That's so small.
I think that's tree 9. I honestly don't have any issue with them taking out tree 9 because of the way it is, and I have absolutely no issue on tree 6. That's that maple.
Yes.
I have question marks on 7 and 8, but I'm reasonably flexible on it.
Tree 10 is the one with the major lean that's laying down. Okay. Tree 9 is the one that's actually sitting in the middle of the cul-de-sac. I think 10 was in the street.
That's right. I have no issue on 9 or 6. I have question marks on 7 and 8. And it's a personal thing. I can't help but like trees that want to survive. And so, you heard Eric, he called it picturesque. I'm down with that, but
I guess where I was going was, is there a way for a stipulation to be made that if they find that they can't make it work on that cul-de-sac end, that approval, if final design isn't as depicted here, and they're not doing the cul-de-sac in the same way, that those tree approvals are not allowed or rescinded, or I don't know.
If they can't develop it, they don't get to just chop the trees down because they're allowed to. I think that hopefully that would just go back to people doing the right thing. You know, if I can't develop the land, I'm not going to even spend any money in there. But it's probably not a smart thing to allow people to just do the right thing.
Also, you know, the folks kept talking, the neighbors kept talking about how they haven't done part 2 of this. But from what I'm looking at here, it looks like it's going all the way up to the property line of the adjacent development.
So I believe what the individual is speaking about, they're getting approval for the entire subdivision, but they do have it in phase 1 and phase 2. I believe phase 1, they start plan right, and then they'll end up on plan left. So
Correct.
it's just 2, you know, there's 2 phases to this subdivision.
Okay, so the first phase is doing the townhomes and such.
Then they actually have to build an amenity center all the way over across the pond on your very lower right. They own a piece of land that has frontage on the Wando River, and they have to build an amenity center there. And
I also think the additional buffer that they put on the peninsula lots over there was a smart thing. It should be enforced. I think, was that your condition number 6, Eric?
that is a condition and I did hear them also state, and again, it's a little unclear in my mind. We've tried to look at that document from the Corps, but I thought I heard them say that the 40-foot setback is a no-cut zone. So we will definitely be placing the silt fence right at that 40-foot and allowing for outfall, of course. But in this exhibit, they add additional linear footage to pick up non-protected grand trees in that area. So we'll figure out that. I think that's where they were going with that proposed conditions, covenants, and restrictions. I'm not quite sure how the city's going to have enforcement power over that, but we'll work through that. But the condition was to provide that exhibit, that additional buffer area as shown on the exhibit dated 9/17. Must provide tree protection barricade to protect the trees in the buffer area.
Okay. Well, I will. I'll just say I'm in favor of the application with Eric's conditions. Save tree 8. If anybody has anything else or wants to throw a motion out.
Tree 8 being the one on that short stub between the
Correct.
By the townhouses there.
Right.
That one right there.
I agree with that one. I think that could be, I agree with you on that tree. I think you could rework things potentially. And I know they've been looking at that. And I guess the question about the cul-de-sac area, you know, one of the neighbors showed the 4-foot contour going through there, cutting into the cul-de-sac. So I guess that's something the engineering is going to be looking at in terms of the elevation of that, right? Because they have, what is their minimum, 5 feet, or is it 5 feet?
The center line of the roads, I believe, have to be at 6.5.
Yeah.
Again, it's the developer will present whether they're on pad or drive unders, and then you know they have to meet our minimum flood elevation, finished floor elevations, obviously.
Yeah. Unless they switched around some of their, but the best trees already are in the tree save areas. So,
right.
They can, if you switch things around and made your HOA out there where it's wet, you don't have the better trees there. The better trees are all already in the save areas. So, I make a motion. I make a motion, we move to approve with staff recommendations with them working with staff to save tree 8
you clarify working with staff? Is that, I'm not comfortable with that.
I think just save tree 8. Just have to save tree 8. Don't say working with staff, just
save tree 8.
save tree 8.
We can rephrase. I make a motion to approve with staff recommendations and saving tree number 8.
Excellent. So motion by Amanda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And the second is Paula.
Correct.
All right. Then we'll just go. I'll go through the roll, and we'll take each person. Say either aye in favor or nay, not in favor. Ms. Martin.
Aye in favor.
Ms. Postel.
Aye in favor.
Ms. Murphy.
Aye in favor.
Mr. Hargett.
Aye in favor.
Thank you. And Mr. Adrian is aye in favor. So it is a unanimous decision. We thank everybody for their time, and have a good evening. We'll go on to our next item. So our next item is item B1. King Street. 735 King Street, North Central. The TMS number is 460-0302-006. Application number is 2010-15-B1. Requested variance from section 54.327 to allow the removal of one protected tree, zoned GB. And I go back to you now, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so this is the application, 735 King Street. This is a lot that fronts on King Street near the intersection of Hugie and King. It is zone GB, bound by GB and DR2F. As you can see, this lot and the corner lot have been vacant for some time. Actually, the corner lot does have that structure with the brown roof, but the lot next to it's been vacant for some time. There's a remnant building pad there. But there are a couple protected trees that have volunteered themselves in on the west property boundary. You can see here we've had some new construction in the neighborhood. There's a new house due west, and the incompatible zoning buffer, went away a few years ago. So we have a 5-foot landscape strip with some trees. And I think this builder actually built a new wall fence there, but you can see curb cut in the old building pad. This is the survey. Again, there's a palm and 2 pecan trees in the upper left, if you will. So we have a kind of an exciting project during COVID-19. The owner is proposing to build a standalone drive-through coffee shop. There will be the ability to walk up and buy a cup of coffee, but very limited inside space. But it's primarily designed for drive-through. Working with the state DOT, King Street, you'll have your egress on the north side. Your ingress on the north side and your egress on the south side. You can see there's an escape lane and also a double order panel in the top of the horseshoe loop, if you will, providing 3 on-site parking spaces, 1 to the north and 2 to the south. And you can see the location of the pecan trees in that escape lane or that second drive-through. Miss Jamie Harefield evaluated the tree. It's a relatively young 19-inch pecan. It's got some signs of broken limbs and damage from storms, and palm tree growing near it and another tree nearby. So staff recommends approval with the condition to plant 2 3-inch native canopy trees on the south side of the project in conjunction with a native grass garden. As you can see on their exhibit, they're proposing a few trees and very limited shrubbery. All that speckling is basically lawn. and we're asking to do a little something different, maybe to soak up a little more water, give it, you know, a little flare around the loop, if you will. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to have a couple of larger trees, native trees with some native grasses on the, at least on the south side. So I'm thinking that the corner lot will redevelop at some point, but it is what it is today. This lot one off the corner. So we have nobody registered to speak in favor or in opposition. So Mr. Chairman, I think you can turn it over to the applicants. Scott, if you could unmute Jamie Harefield and Erica Chase, please, both with Stantec, and then also the owner, Johnny Grasso.
Hi, good evening. This is Erica Chase with Stantec. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you, Eric.
We will swear you in.
Okay.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, thank you. And
Excellent.
my address for the record is 4969 Centerpoint Drive in North Charleston. So to give you a little bit more history, and Eric, thank you for the introduction. Stantec and I have been working on the project early 2019, and I think there were some TRC meetings prior to that with David Thompson, the architect, and Johnny Grosso, the owner. But basically, Johnny's model, who is local to Charleston, is a quick serve, drive-through coffee and prepackaged food model, along with walk-up service and a small patio. There'll be no inside dining or anywhere inside aside from restrooms open to customers. So it's really a walk up and drive through model. He's working with some local coffee bean roasters and some local bakeries for prepared foods that he would just basically warm up in the building. And so to help kind of expedite through the drive through. So the reason the site has two drive-through lanes, as Eric mentioned, is between Michael Mathis with City Traffic and Transportation and DOT. They are really wanting to ensure there's no backup on King Street. So they're wanting that additional stacking requirement, which is requiring us to move the 19-inch pecan tree. As Eric mentioned, you know, we're really looking for the variance to remove it with the 15 trees per acre requirement. And we only have a small number of trees on site, which is why we need to ask for this variance. I think that covers everything. Jamie, I don't know if you want to touch on the tree itself.
Yeah, no, I think too.
Jamie.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I need to.
Yes, you're right.
You're right. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Excellent. If you could state your address for the record.
4969 Centerpoint Drive, Suite 200, North Charleston.
Thank you.
Just to follow up with Eric's presentation and Erica's, so the pecan tree is located in that second turn lane, and given the site restrictions to be able to provide 2 turn lanes to meet the stacking needs, we've explored the site plan as much as we can. You can see the drive goes all the way to the 5-foot buffer required in the back. And so there's not a lot of room to rework it to be able to avoid that tree or be able to stay outside of its tree protected zone. So we are proposing to remove it, but as you can see, those hatched trees are potential mitigation trees. So we're trying to plan to be able to plant back to replace that tree per Eric's recommendations.
We'll also be utilizing a lot of permeable pavement on the site too, which are the LID practices I know Eric loves.
Excellent. All right. Is there anybody else, Eric, that wants to speak in favor of the application? Or?
No, sir. There was nobody registered to speak in favor or in opposition.
All right.
No comments.
We'll close the application to the public, and it'll be open to the board for any discussion, questions, or a motion.
I make a motion we approve with staff recommendations.
I'm a little worried about your staff recommendations there, Eric. I mean, if they want to do turf, isn't that really DRB area of expertise? You know, I don't want to be like jamming things down there.
Yeah, I just thought the south side, as you're waiting in that line.
I hear you. I understand. I'm just saying I don't feel that this.
It was actually, I believe, a TRC comment from me to, you know, and it does. I can't remember. You would have to unmute the folks, whether this is BA or small or large, but there's a lot of talk about, this is in a special protection area. As you all know or may not know, the intersection of King and Hugie is a major flood event. And, you know, I do understand, I don't know if it's ever creeped up this far onto this lot. I know the gas stations always gets hit pretty hard, but native grasses, anything to soak up more water and to beautify and kind of just jazz up the.
I think we have the right to do that because we're constantly in a position where we're confronted with things that the BAR, for instance, or CCDRB has already, you know, the BAR in particular has already dictated on a particular site. So I don't see why we can't have things in our recommendations and conditions. It's the same thing as the building being up at the front of the property and not having a setback from the trees. That we, you know, that happens constantly. And this would, because it's new construction, it would go to the BAR, right? Or is that, is there a square footage on?
It does require BAR. I don't know if it's large or small.
Yeah. I'll second.
All right, so the motion by Nell, seconded by Amanda. I'll go through the roll. So Ms. Barton, you're?
Aye in favor.
All right. Ms. Postel?
Aye in favor.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye in favor.
Mr. Hargett?
I'm going to abstain because I don't like those conditions.
Okay. And then Mr. Adrian says aye in favor. So we are, motion is approved 4-0 with 1 abstention. All right, thank you very much. All right, so our next item on the agenda is going to actually be item B3.
That's correct, B3. Okay.
Item B3 is 2228 North Westchester Drive in West Ashley. The TMS numbers are 309-1500-001 and 069. Application number 2010-15-B3. Request a 1-year extension of the special exception granted by the board on 10/3/18 and request a special exception from section 54.513 to allow a reduction of the OCRM critical line buffer zoned LI.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, prior to getting started, no individual signed up to speak in support or opposition and no comments. But this is the application. What they're up against a timeline. And if you recall, 2 years ago, 10/3/2018, this project was in front of the board. As you see here, 2 parcels zoned LI. It is the San Andrews PSD facility. They were running real strong, real fast, but then of course they got hit by some financing issues and the project had to slow down. They were just at TRC this morning, getting it back on track, but this is the entrance at the end of North Westchester. You can see, you know, they have a trailer basically for an office. All the equipment's basically exposed. So back then, approved 10/3/18, new building, new gas pump facility, new shed to park vehicles under, demolition plan, proposed layout, and top left coming down the left side and then wrapping around the south side plan bottom is an OCRM critical line buffer due to a critical tidally influenced ditch, basically. So they went through the rigorous process with submitting the pollutant loading document which I have the front of here. Obviously, we send that on to our stormwater folks. They review it, they criticize, they ask for revisions, and finally they bless it. And you all approved. It met the special exception, which is a fact-finding function of the board. So basically, there were minor changes identified this morning at TRC just due to budget constraints, but the basic footprint is the same. So with that said, staff recommends approval for a one-year extension until 10/3/2021. And our team that needs to be unmuted is from HLA, actually just one individual, Andrew Todd Burke with HLA.
So before that, Eric, it looked like there were two. There was the request for a one-year extension and there was a request for a special exception, or is that just what the original approval was the special exception?
Yes, so I apologize for that. This was just a special exception. The tree issue at the time back in 2001 went away. They were deemed Fs, storm damage.
Okay.
So they just had to deal with the OCRM critical climb buffer.
Okay. All right, so is the applicant present?
Yes, sir. This
Excellent.
is Andrew Todd Burke with HLA.
So it's not Eric Schultz, that's Andrew. Okay. Well, Andrew, let me swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Excellent.
And the address here is 29A Linebach Drive in Charleston.
Excellent. Thank you. Please go ahead if you have anything to add.
I do not. Eric explained it perfectly. But if there are any questions regarding the pollutant loading comparison or the application need for extension, I'll be happy to ask them or answer them.
Excellent. Thank you. Then if it's all right, we'll close the public portion of the meeting since there's nobody signed up registered to speak. And it'll be open to the board for any discussion or a motion.
I make the motion, we move to approve.
Second.
All right, so we got a motion by Amanda Martin for approval, seconded by Nell Postel. We'll just go through the roll. So Ms. Barton?
Aye. Yes.
And Ms. Postel?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Hargett?
Aye, in favor.
Excellent. Mr. Adrian is aye in favor, unanimous, 5-0. Thank you for your time. And now we'll go to our final item on today's agenda, which is 2237 Arthur Gilliard Lane, West Ashley, the TMS number of 35513000043, application number 2010-15-B4. Requests a variance from section 54.327 to allow the removal of 2 grand trees. Requests a special exception from section 54.327 to allow the removal of 1 grand tree, zoned SR1. Eric?
Yes, so Mr. Chairman, to begin, the second request is struck because upon inspection, the tree measured, and I measured it several times, believe me, 23.7. And it didn't grow a whole lot from 2 or 3 years ago when I identified the tree as a 23-inch tree as well. So even with all our water, it was a water oak. The request to remove 2 grand trees. So this is the application, applicant being Crosby Creations, Jody Crosby. His explanation on how it meets the hardship test. This is a single family lot. Note it's how wide it is in comparison to some neighboring lots. And that is due to when this was an old homestead that had a lot of acreage associated with it. Matter of fact, almost across the street from this lot was where the home stood. And it was zoned SR1 and went through the whole subdivision process many years ago. And domino effect. There was a lot of trees along the edge of the Church Creek, and you know, some trees might have been a little less than 24 inches. I'm not so sure, because they're pretty mature red oaks that we'll talk about in a minute. But there was a power line that traversed across. You can see that angle, if you will, in this photo. That's a pretty substantial transmission power line, and the live oak on the right-hand side of the street is where the home was. So this is a street view. There's a very large red oak front left, and then behind that, you can't really tell, but near those pines, kind of blending in with the pines, is a 54-inch live oak. It has a pretty significant cavity in it that has actually had a fire. It's all burned out and kind of charcoal, but the tree has, in my opinion, and also I believe with the applicant, enough green tissue. It doesn't seem to be. So in the group, in the middle, are where you have that triangular configuration of the water oak and two red oaks trees within maybe 20, 25 feet of each other, not even that. There's the triangle, if you will. You got a 27-inch red oak, 29, and then the 23.7 water oak. The large circle front left is that is the red oak, and then that large circle between the two red arrows is the live oak. And then there's actually 2 or 3 additional live oaks or other species grand trees along the marsh edge in the 25-foot and 10-foot building setback zone. So the proposed house is this. It's just dictating, due to the large tree front right, that the driveway has to go right. And this house is not overly gross in size, in my opinion. So driveway right, drive under, and then the house. The 2 red oaks you can kind of see in that photo left, and then the water oak in the 2 photos in the center and to the right. Additional pictures of the stems. Interesting, they gave you kind of a streetscape of some of the size of the houses and neighboring houses, and you know, the way they front the street and have grand, because they're in the flood zone, steps and what have you. Numerous letters of support. John and Beth Trayan, Philip McGaha, Paul Galloway, Todd Vasco, and Mr. Flowers, Stan Flowers, all letters of support. So therefore, staff recommends approval with the condition must plant 42 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the lot. It's going to be tough. So I failed to mention that they will have to submit a landscape plan for staff review. If there's any residual inches, I have no objection for them making a contribution to the city street tree program. Must use 4-foot chain link fence as tree protection barricade. And I envision this going perpendicular to the street, right down the left side of the house, to protect the red oak and the live oak, the full length from front lot to back lot. Must provide a landscape plan for staff review and approval, and must have a certified arborist just submit a tree preservation plan for the remaining grand trees on the lot. So with that said, our applicant is, or we have 2 individuals that we need to identify, Jody Crosby and Libby Galloway.
Excellent. And there's nobody registered in favor or opposed?
There are no registrations for opposition, support, or there was no comment left in Innovate.
Okay, thank you. Let me know when the applicant is available. We'll swear him in.
I'm here. This is Jody Crosby. Are you able to hear me?
Yep, I got you, Jody.
I'm here. This is Libby Galloway.
Okay, excellent. I'll swear both of you in at the same time here. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Excellent. Then you all can begin. If you have anything to add to the presentation.
I would like, just because I have not seen the conditions until now, I would like to defer to Libby, being that she is one of the lot owners, to whether or not she has any objections to any of the conditions that we might need to try to contest.
Libby, I'll just give you an education real quick. The way I came up with 42 inches is that the ordinance, based on the tree species that the tree sits in, whatever category it is. In this case, the requirement is 3/4 of the DBH inches removed. So the 27 and the 29 totaled up to 42. I realized that, you know, you're with the side yard being occupied by that large live oak, and you may not have enough space to plant all 42 inches. Typically, a tree on a single family lot is 2.5 inch in caliber. So we'll do our best, or you'll do your best to come up with a landscape plan, provide what you can on the site, and then the residual inches we divide by 2.5. We come up with a total number of trees, and then we multiply that number by $295, and that's what a contribution to the city street tree program would be. 4-foot chain link fence is pretty. 4-foot chain link fence is not like a full-blown residential 4-foot fence. You don't put it in concrete, the post in concrete. You just drive steel post, put a cap on that post, put a steel rail across the top, and then fasten your wire mesh. And again, this is critical to protect the large trees to the left of the house. The landscape plan will be required when you submit your single family house plan, and our single family house plan reviewer will have the red flag go up and will consult with myself. And then the arborist, just a simple engage, retain a certified arborist as to how he'll mulch, prune some dead wood out of the live oak in particular, and the trees on the marsh edge.
Okay. I don't have any objections to any of those recommendations.
Based on that, you've already presented the application, Mr. Schultz. I really have nothing else to add unless the board has any questions for us on the application.
Yes, well, thank you. We will close this application to the public, and it'd be open to the board for any discussion, questions, or a motion.
I make a motion, we move to approve with staff recommendations.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion for approval with staff conditions by Ms. Barton, and seconded by Mr. Hargett. Let's go to the vote. Start with Ms. Barton.
Aye, in favor.
Thank you. Ms. Postel.
I in favor.
Ms. Murphy.
Aye in favor.
And Mr. Hargett.
Aye in favor.
And I also am aye in favor, so it's a unanimous vote of 5-0. And we thank you for your patience, since you were the last application and had to wait 2 hours.
18 minutes.
So that concludes the meeting, so we are adjourned.
That is correct. Thank you all very much.
Eric Lee, thank you guys. Fantastic job.